So, again, we have a guest today. I like when we have guests because I really like hearing from experts or people that have had, experiences, seeing spirits or channeling energy or whatever their gift is. And the thing that gets me about the people that we've encountered is everybody is so willing to share their gift. Everybody wants to share their gift, right? And today's guest is no different. Today I bring you Marilyn Redmond. Now, Marilyn has many, many gifts, but just to name a few, James, she's a psychic medium. She's a tarot card reader. She's a channel, and she's channeled the Ascended Masters. She's channeled, like she said, Archangel Michael. She's an intuitive. She's an author. She's a holistic health person and healer. She can do past life regressions. She sees angels. She sees spirits. And she does a lot of other stuff. That's just the tip of the iceberg. She does all of these other things as well. And so she is our guest today.
She's had an incredible life. She really has.
She's had 12 near-death experiences, and she says that as she put it, she shouldn't be here. So I'm really excited to speak with her. She has a wonderful website. She'll tell you about it. She's got some fascinating stories. I really enjoyed meeting her. Are you ready to bring her on?
Let's bring Marilyn on.
Welcome to the podcast, author, psychic medium, channel, intuitive, tarot card reader, Marilyn Redmond. Marilyn, thank you so much for being on our podcast, That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. We're excited to have you. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing well today. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. What's up, James?
I'm well.
Both of you? That's great.
So, go ahead, James. Go ahead.
I'm excited to have Marilyn today. So I'm just excited to have Marilyn with us today.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
So, Marilyn, when we say that's some crazy shit, we just mean that some things are just hard to explain, right? And there's just no other way to phrase it. It's just crazy shit. And so in your experiences and the things that you do, tell our listeners, what it is that you do and why we think that you fit, this thing we call crazy shit.
Well, I definitely fit because my craziness is things that people would not normally have in their lives. And if they did, they discount it or go into denial or say it's not possible, you're making it up, you got a good imagination, But the truth is I'm still here because of all that crazy shit. I should have been dead long ago.
So tell us about it. Tell us, tell the listeners, who really don't know, I know that you have a lot of things going on. You're an author, you're a psychic medium, you talk to spirits, you do tarot, you have all of these things going on, hypnotherapy, all of these things. So how did it all come to be where it is today? I know that's a big question, but how did all this happen? When did your abilities come through and how did all that come together?
Well, I'm actually writing a book about this. And when I was a child, I had good intuition, but the church I went to didn't allow you to talk about that kind of thing. So if it didn't come out of the hymnal, you didn't pray. And if it didn't come out of the Bible, you didn't talk about it. And so I just kept my mouth shut. And so I ended up in a domestic violent marriage. I was raised in domestic violence with lots of abuse, and that's what I married. Like attracts like, I found out. And he tried to kill me several times. And one of the nights I knew I wasn't getting home alive. We were driving home from a vacation in Harrison Hot Springs in Canada down to the state of Washington. And he went into a rage. I won't give you all the ugly details, but I was scared to death because I knew decide I was not going to get home alive that night. I knew other times he tried to kill me, but for some reason I just knew that was going to be it. And for the first time in my life, I said a prayer from my heart instead of the hymnal. And I said, God, help me, please help me. I really don't want to die. And within minutes, he had pulled over off the road and passed out of the wheel. So he was driving like a maniac, all sides of the road, down the middle, stopped in the middle. We had almost 3 head-on collisions. That's when I really got spooked. I mean, it was just like, wow. And so I prayed, what else are you going to do, And he made me agree to not get out of the car till we got home. I didn't know he was into taking revenge out on me that night. And that's why he said, no, you're not getting out of the car. Well, where he pulled over in Canada, there was no town, no house, just plain land with no police going down. It was Trans-Canadian Highway 1. Couldn't get help anywhere. So I sat in the car, totally full of anxiety, and he woke up the next morning, I should say, and it was a beautiful sunny day. Apparently he'd had blacked out from drinking when this was going on. And so when we stopped for coffee, I left a message for help from the police at the restaurant. And I'm giving you the short version, right? And within 5 minutes, there were 5 police cars on our tail with sirens. And that was one of my first experiences. When I left that note at the restaurant, I could see another person standing next to me and got the paper out of my purse, got the pen out of my purse, wrote the note, put our license number on it, told the direction we're going, and please take me out of the car. And it was like, I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. And I put the note next to the cash register, and next thing I knew, I was getting help. So that was probably one of my first, being able to actually see things happen that you aren't really planning on or don't understand. Fortunately, I was able to move in with my minister's family for a couple of weeks till he got out of the house and the restraining orders were served and he was booted and so forth. And I was on a spiritual path at that point through 12-step programs. And I started doing a lot of praying and meditating. And things started to open up for me that I never even heard of for help. Because I asked for help, God, please help me. And the help showed up. I'd never heard of 12 steps. I'd never heard of alcoholism. I never ended up in Al-Anon. I never heard of, that it was alcoholism was a disease. And I found counselors that could help me and so forth. And all kinds of help that I didn't even know the word alcoholism, or even guess he was an alcoholic, because where I grew up I'm 81 years old. Where I grew up, you didn't talk about that kind of stuff. It was still a big secret, and there was like the elephant in the living room. So I had no clue at all, and through what I learned in going to family treatment, I learned it was a disease, and I started getting tools and whatever. And from that, I started joining other spiritual groups and became very interested in, I was teaching spiritual things in the junior college, but I wanted more credentials, so I became an ordained spiritual minister. And she put me through paces for the mediumship and the counseling. And she taught us how to bring people in from the other side, how to connect with the other side. And I've been in touch with my angels because some other times when, I've been off several cliffs, Grand Canyon and up at Banff. So I know how to connect with the other side really well. And I've been doing it now for 30 years, I guess you'd say, well, closer to 35 years, where I could actually talk about it, okay? Because in the church days, you didn't. So various things have come up in my household and, fires and whatever, I can share those stories, where I literally have seen the angels come in. I've actually had an experience where angels have come in person, human form, and helped me too. And when Archangel Michael showed up in my life several times, and he's with me almost daily now, but what he told me was when he was there when I went off the cliff at the Grand Canyon and I tried suicide, and apparently he was there too, he said, but I couldn't see him in those days because my energy was low. And when you have low vibrations, you can't tune in with high vibrations, which is the higher realm. And so as I grew into higher vibrations, I see Michael and worked with him a lot, and St. Germain, helping in spiritual help for people. So it's kind of evolved in various activities and surprises where they show up. and thank God they do. Well, one of the real biggies was a fire at my house. I was painting one night, and I had been also teaching earlier in the evening, and I thought, in my house I had classes, and I thought, well, I'll let the candle burn because I'd hardly ever burn them and might as well use them, right? And I had put some paintings behind the candle on the ledge of the fireplace, which is brick. And all of a sudden there's this burst of flames. And because the burst hit the pictures behind the candle, I used the candle to prop them. And the pictures went into flames, and all of a sudden there's these big flames, and it's coming to the rug on the floor, and the furniture was, dropped on the couch railing. It was a wooden railing there. And this fire's going helter-skelter, and I ran for the phone. And the angel put my hand back on the phone and said, "You don't need to call them, we'll put it out." And I watched the angels put out this fire because it had gotten too big. I knew I was trying to put it out, and I knew I couldn't. So that's when I called 911 for the fire department. And I literally watched them put the fire out. And the next day, I do a lot of meditating. The next day I says, "Okay, what's that story about?" And they said, well, it was your anger needed to vent and come out because your mother would never let you paint when you were a child. She always said there's not enough money for more paper. So all life I wanted to do this art, but I was not allowed to. I always had to do the chores. I was the Cinderella of, she remarried, and my younger half sister, I should say, got all the goodies. I got all the chores. And so I never had time to worry about painting. And so I was being able to do that now that I was divorced from my husband. But I had all this stuffed anger. And she said, we looked all around. Now this is really cool. We looked all around your house trying to find the safest place where this could happen. The anger was so intense, it wasn't just emotional anger. It had to manifest in physical form. And so she said, we looked all through your house on what was the safest place, and we decided in front of the fireplace, where it's bricks, and the little shelves were cement. And she said, we felt that would be the best place, and it wouldn't get out of hand. And she says it did get out of hand. That's why we stepped in. So I had to have the room repainted, of course, and I have a rug over the burned hole in the floor in the art room. But they show up and help me in those kinds of ways. It's amazing. I had a flat tire heading for my grandchildren on a Thanksgiving holiday. And it was snowing early that year. And I bought some special chains, and they said, oh, these are the new style chains. And they weren't just metal rings. They also had some thin wires, and they were supposed to be better, haha. And so the truckers at the top of the summit put the chains on for me, and I started heading towards, from the Seattle area, towards Idaho, Boise, Idaho. And by the time I'm like a half an hour into Pendleton on my way to see the grandkids, I had a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere.
Wow, during the snowstorm.
Yeah, and in those days on the television, there had been warnings of single women on the freeway being accosted. So there I was. This is after the divorce. All these things are after the divorce. After the divorce, I was scared. You know, here I am stranded. I'm on the wheel of the car. There's no rubber by that point. And what am I going to do? I mean, this is before cell phones. And I don't even know if there would have been a signal there anyway. But all of a sudden I got real peaceful. From the anxiety just stopped. And I felt like, okay, what's going on? And this little truck, instead of full size, not compact, but there's a term for these small sized trucks, pickups. And he pulls up, this old man in this pickup pulls up, and he lowers the window and he says, "Ma'am, can I help you?" Now, I was always raised where you don't get into cars with strangers. And nobody's around if there was going to be a problem. And I, for some reason, I mean, that's the only option I had. I said, yes, you can help me. And that was not where I come from, because I was taught not to ask for help. When you come from a dysfunctional family, nobody's there for you. So I got in the truck and he said, well, it was obvious he was retired age. He says, I have a job to help make ends meet with my retirement, and I'm heading for work, but I will drop you off at Les Schwab and they'll take care of your tire. So I said, okay. So he left me at the tire store, and they came out and took care of the tire. Well, but before they came out and did all this and whatever, I went to turn around and thank him. And he wasn't even going out the door. He was just gone.
Wow.
And so when
I've read a story about that, something like that. In a book I read about angels, I read a story very similar.
And when I went to talk with the men about why I needed the tires, I needed to get the tire fixed so I could get across the Blue Mountains before dark, and that's another hairy story, but I had been in those mountains during snowy weather, and it is a disastrous pass, okay? And I wanted to get over the mountains before dark, because I'm driving by myself, right? So here's a whole room full of people in the tire store because they know the storm's coming, and they're there to get their chains and tires on, snow tires or chains, so they can get where they need to be. And there's probably 12 people ahead of me. And the man whispered to me, and he says, if you don't tell anybody I'm taking you next, he says, you'll get across the mountains. So they took me next, and I, just as it was getting dark, I'm coming down from the mountains into the valley below the mountain area, and I'd gotten over the mountains. But if that man hadn't have taken me to the tire store, I don't know what I would have done.
Wow. So, Marilyn, I noticed that one of the things that you do too is the psychic medium stuff. And so what is that like? You're reading for people, and are you talking to their past loved ones? Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I do both of what you said. In reading for people, when people want readings, I connect with whatever energy. They usually have questions, and if it's about their life, they're looking for what's going on and answers and options. And it's all about energy. So I tune into their energy. That's what tarot is about. You have them put their energy on the cards, and you read the energy off the cards. But you can do it directly too. And so I can do both ways. And so I answer their questions by tuning in. And usually John the Divine comes in when I was taught to channel. My gatekeeper's called Martha. She was the sister of Lazarus in the Bible. And she makes sure that all the surrounding energy around me is safe. She won't let anything in that's negative, okay? So I'm protected. And so then John comes in, and especially if we're doing healings, I channel when I do healings with my fellow. He's a really great pranic healer. And John will come in. If I'm not channeling it directly from spirit, he'll come in and tell me information that person needs to know. And usually it's emotional or his things from their past that they still need to look at to heal or whatever. I love channeling directly I used to have groups that would come to my house, and I channeled John. I've channeled Archangel Michael, Saint Germain, Jesus at Christmas time, and their messages are on YouTube. I have 176 YouTubes, and a lot of them, about half of them are channeling. And in fact, I was channeled about this, what's going on with our government right now, 35 years ago. It's on one of my channelings on YouTube, where Spirit came in, and I guess this was Michael. Well, Michael also came in and gave me the prophecy 35 years ago about this too. And that what's going on is that what I was told then, of course, I didn't understand it completely like we do now, that we would have presidents that would actually be tyrants running the show for several administrations. And then we would come into this storm like a hurricane, and people would be caught up in this chaos, you know, this energy that was just rampant like a hurricane. But in the center of the hurricane is the eye of the hurricane, which is where there is peace. And if you stay really close to the center of the hurricane, where God is, or your higher power, how you choose to term that, if you stay close in the center, you're going to be okay. You're not going to be in the craziness. And basically, the craziness has to happen for the calm to come. So we're coming through a huge transition that was actually foretold in the Bible, the 1,000 years of peace. We're moving out of third dimension into fifth dimension, into unconditional love and unity, harmony, and the grace of God, where everything, the negative, when it says Satan will be bound, they're saying it won't be negative. It will be all positive. Like when you pass over into spirit, when you pass over, because people call it dying, you move into a space where there's no negativity. They call it heaven. It's really nirvana, but and that we're going to have heaven on earth, and we're in that transition now. So I was predicted that 35 years ago, and I channeled about that. And one of my channelings was from Saint Germain, when people were in the room. And after I got through channeling how people can put themselves in that center, Saint Germain says, now you're going to put that in a book. So that turned out to be about my second book. Hang on 1 minute. One sec. Mac, I'm on Zoom. I'll call you back. So that was my second book. And it has how to eliminate the ego. Because the voices up here are giving you the negative karmic also information, anything that needs to be unburied so you can heal it and release it and move into that unconditional love, move from your head to your heart. And that's the kind of work I do with counseling, is helping people to move into a higher consciousness. And I can bring people in from the other side. I've done that quite a lot. And sometimes I can even bring their voice in, not just the message, depending on how strong the energy is. I had an amazing experience where I was getting trained actually with this, was a minister, was part of the training group, and he came to me for a message from a friend who had passed over, and I says, well, don't you want to talk to your father? He's standing right here next to you. And he's, oh no, they were really not getting along at all, even though his dad was on the other side. And so I shared about his friend that he wanted to know about. And then all of a sudden, his dad showed up, and he was dressed black with a black blanket over his head. This is spirit, of course. And I said, well, your dad's right here. Do you want to talk to him? Now, I can't tell you how this happened, but the channel inside of me just plain cleared, and his dad started talking to him through me, and he was in spirit was talking back to him. I mean, I really, I'm not even sure what they said, because it just was because of me, not through me. And the next thing I know, the dad's pulling off the blanket off of his head, and the son is happy as a cat, you know, and the father's happy, and they're smiling. And they figured out that there had been a misunderstanding as why all of this had gone on, where they weren't getting along, and they figured out what the misunderstanding was. and they were both tickled pink. And the next day when his wife came to, after the conference, came to pick the minister up, he's a 70-year-old guy running down the hotel hallway towards his wife like a little kid. He's so happy. He had to tell his wife, but he just figured, he had this conversation with his dad, and it's okay. Everything's okay.
Wow.
He was just tickled pink. And so when you can help people, I get a real high out of people being able to see the opportunities and the better outcomes and how things can be improved and how they can change into a better space. I mean, it's just very uplifting for me.
Yeah. It sounds like what you do is amazing. And I think it's cool. Do you have any questions, James? Go ahead.
Well, what I wanted to ask Marilyn, if you could leave our listeners with one thought, what would that be?
Oh. The best is yet to come. Our egos tell us to be fearful and to be afraid of the unknown. But what's really happening is the unknown is love. Be open to receive what's coming. It's better than you can expect. You've been programmed to be in fear about everything in your life. And I'm writing 2 books at once, one about my angel things I'm telling you, and then one about sorting truth from false. You have been trained to stay in that fear. Discard it. Fire the voices in your head. Stay in your heart. Know God loves you. Always has loved you. There's nothing wrong with you. Only culture tells you that. And know that your inheritance is the prosperity and love of the universe. And all is well. It's all God. When you get rid of the negative, it's all good.
Wow, those are good words. Marilyn, what are the name of your books?
Oh, well, the first one was Roses Have Thorns, and it's in poetry form, and I do all the artwork. It's my story, how I got all the dysfunctional in my background, how I got to turning to God, higher power. And then the one that St. Germain had me write was from the channeling of how it's called The Real Meaning of 2012. And that basically is that our universe has changed from the energy from the sun, and we are now getting a higher consciousness being sent into our planet to raise it in consciousness, so it'll return to like at the beginning of the Bible, like a paradise. Okay, so we're raising in consciousness so that we can have the 1,000 years of peace. Then my most important book is 500 pages. It took 25 years to write. And it's the ultimate self-help book called Paradigm Busters, because see, everything we've been taught is wrong. So I'm helping people change their mindset. And so it's Paradigm Busters, and it's the details of not just you got to change your thinking, but how to do it. Everybody tells you to do it, but they don't tell you how. So when Archangel Michael came in with the prophecy I shared with you, he also told me that day, he says, you are going to write a crossover book from the 12-step programs into the main media, into the main culture. So they can have the same information of how to move into that higher consciousness. So that book is Paradigm Busters. And then I wrote Road to Success, which I wrote articles, chapters for books about success for a particular publisher of mine. And I put my chapters together and put it into called Road to Success, with tools and answers of how anybody can move into a higher, better place in your life if you're following, things that work for you. And then the last book that I've had published is Finding Reality Beyond Fear. And so I've become fearless. And see, that's when it's all good. And that's when that's when the wisdom shows up, and that's when the prosperity shows up, and that's when you're empowered. And you can actually be the master in your life because you don't have the barriers and blockages from the ego or devil or whatever you want to term it and you're strictly living in the grace of God. And so when you're emotionally available and you're not blocked off from the energies of love in the universe, then you can create in your life all these things that you wanted. It was just the ego stopped it. And we don't have to limit ourselves. God is limitless. So as you eliminate those things, and there's some chapters in there that help you also, like putting I have God on my water, God water, because it changes the vibration of your water. And you're 80% water. So as you change your system into higher consciousness, and don't use fluoride water, anything toxic will lower your vibration. So I don't eat any GMO type food. I eat organic. And so there's things in there that'll help you to raise into beyond fear. So you can have that life. You see, fear is like the little kid in the dark room at night, and he's scared, and he calls, Mommy, Daddy, there's a boogeyman in here. And Mommy comes in and turns on the light. Where's the darkness go? That's when we turn on the light, there is no fear. And that's what I'm about, is helping people to find the light in their lives.
Fantastic. And if people wanted to visit your website, can you call out the website for us?
My website is angelicasgifts.com. Angelica is my main angel. And I named because I do so many things, it's kind of like an umbrella name over all my activities. But on my website, you'll see all the various things I do. And it's angelicasgifts.com. If you forget, you can Google my name, Marilyn L. Redmond, and there's a lot of things under Google for my name. I have a blog, marilynredmondsbooks.blog.com, and I have 976 YouTubes, and I have my books are available at amazon.com.
Fantastic. Marilyn, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I enjoyed speaking with you. It was fun. I learned a lot. I think it's fantastic what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. I like the message that you're trying to get out there.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Kelly, we've talked to some people who've had some crazy lives. The things that Marilyn has experienced with all the near-death experiences and the angels, she's had an incredible life. And when you look at her, she looks like this, your little old lady grandma, but she's had a hard life, man.
And she doesn't look 81.
Oh, no, not at all. That's the thing, too. She doesn't.
I so enjoyed speaking with her, and her stories are just fascinating. I mean, she has led this long, very interesting life where she said she didn't plan any of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yes, if you are interested in learning more about Marilyn, because that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we talked about, her website is angelicgifts.com. angelicgifts.com. All right, James.